You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. Chris Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com. The earliest thing that makes it official. Welcome to the big show. As always, the Chris Voss Show is the family that loves you but doesn't judge you, at least not as harshly as the rest of your family, because, you know, we believe in you. We know that if you listen to the Chris Voss Show, you're going to be smarter, better, and brighter, and you're going to contribute to the world much better. Opinions expressed by guests on the podcast are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the Chris Voss Show. Some guests of the show may be advertising on the podcast, but it is not an endorsement or review of any kind. Today's featured author comes to us from bookstolifemarketing.co.uk. With expert publishing to strategic marketing, they help authors reach their audience and maximize their book's success. Today, we have an amazing young man on the show. We're going to be talking to him about his book called Basecamp, The Complete Guide to Mentoring, out November 29th, 2024 by Martin Kidd. We're going to get into some of the details, some of the stories, and how he can help you live a better life, and some of the advice that he's going to give to us there. He is a father, grandfather, and husband. He's a physiotherapist with 40 years of experience supporting others through various stages of life and career path. He's an actor and a singer, a writer and producer, and a colleague and traveler. He and his wife, Andrea, reside in the deep south of New Zealand, having lived and worked across the country of Australia, UK, and USA. Welcome to the show, Martin. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Thanks for coming as well. We certainly appreciate it. Give us your .coms. Where on the internet do you want people to find you out?
Well, we need for you to access the book on Amazon, on Ex Libris, and Barnes & Noble. Those are our websites. And at this point, I'm developing a website which is not up and running yet. That will be something that will be available at some stage soon.
Cool. Do you know the website .com URL yet?
No, I don't. No.
Okay. All right. So we'll watch for that. We'll have a link for it on the Chris Voss Show if you want to update in the future. So give us a 30,000 overview. What's in your new book, Basecamp, The Complete Guide to Mentoring?
It's around the whole perspective of relationships. And so mentoring is providing support for people in a non-judgmental, compassionate, protected, confidential way.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to do that through our life. All the way from when we're kids, we are mentored, and we actually provide mentoring for people all the way through our lives. I'm still being mentored by other people. And it's really understanding and unpacking what those relationships look like. Now, the basis of that is understanding yourself. So if you know who you are, where you're from, what's your background, where do your values hang, then you're going to be much better at making a reasonable go at supporting somebody else. Because if you understand yourself, you're more likely to understand where they're coming from. And it's the face in the mirror. One of the chapters is called The Face in the Mirror. So that's the very first thing we have to do in understanding ourselves as mentors is, who are we? Where do we come from? I come from New Zealand, which is a colonial country. I guess the US is colonial as well when you think about it. Ours is a little more recent. And, you know, where have my people come from? What do they bring to my background to help me understand why I really like routine, why I love to hang out in the garden, why do I love my family, where does my faith come from, why do I have a good sense of what's right and what's wrong. Now, all of those are intrinsic to you because of what's come before you. Understand that, and then you can start building your relationship with those around you who you have to support.
Yeah. So what was the reason you wrote the book? What was the motivation behind it?
I've seen mentoring done really badly, Chris. And I guess I think it's incumbent on us to share our experiences as we get a little older. And I certainly had a lot that I wanted to share so that those who choose to be mentors have a framework upon which they can base their relationship with the person that they're mentoring, not badly, put it that way. It's certainly been a long journey for me. I've had hundreds of physiotherapy students, lots of early career colleagues. It sharpened and focused my ideas about mentoring, believe it or not, when I became a grandfather, because my daughter and son-in-law, as first-time parents, needed a lot more support, I think, than what we had anticipated might be. And what does that look like? And I don't know if you're a grandfather, Chris, but
No.
You've got to do that sort of thing non-judgmentally too, don't you? That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, kids got to have a little bit of room to bounce around and learn stuff with.
They sure do, yeah.
All that good stuff. So tell us about yourself. How did you grow up? What were some of the influences you had, and what got you into these fields?
I've grown up throughout New Zealand. My father was a priest, an Anglican or Episcopalian priest. And so 3 or 4 years we upped stakes and moved on to another parish, if you like. He then moved into a more permanent role in the hospital as a chaplain. And so we were able to put down roots through my high school and university years, living up in the main city, the biggest city in New Zealand, Auckland. I then went off to physiotherapy school, and we travelled pretty much straight away. So my wife and I had children young and took our toddlers with us to the UK. We then went and lived in Michigan for a year.
Mm-hmm.
Had a wonderful time there up in the northern Midwest, and then came back home to New Zealand, where I've worked for myself in the private setting. In other words, self-employed. I've worked in a hospital setting, worked at the university as an academic, and so I've got a broad-reaching remit, I guess, to provide a little bit of advice around all of those contexts of life, let alone, having 3 children and 2 grandchildren at the moment.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah, so we've moved a lot. We've had to make a lot of adjustments and look at what support systems needed to be put in place for us to survive. For example, when we were in the UK, we lived with a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. We lived in 6 different places in the space of 12 months. So we just kind of took them with us. And as long as they had crayons and a bit of paper, they were sweet. It's really drawing on those experiences, I guess, Chris, to be able to say, okay, I've got a broad range of experience of life in different countries, in different contexts of living, in different contexts of working, and trying to think to myself, well, how can I share that with other people? Because I think, as I said, as experienced humans, I think it is incumbent on us to share our experiences with others.
Definitely. And so you have inside the book the complete guide to how to do it, how to mentor people, how to get them.
So what is the key to mentoring? Well, thank you for asking that question. It revolves around 3 main things. The first thing is trust. A mentoring relationship needs to be based on trust, which comes from you understanding yourself and your mentee understanding themselves, or you at least allowing them to grow into that space. The second thing is communication, which needs to be open and empathetic, both in your verbal language and in your body language. This is quite different to this in terms of how the mentee is going to, perceive the message that you might be sharing. And the third and possibly most important part of a mentoring relationship that makes for good mentoring is confidentiality. What goes in the room stays in the room. What goes on tour stays on tour, as the saying goes. And a mentoring relationship must be underpinned by a contractual obligation to keep communication confidential. And that leads back to trust, which is based on open communication, which then assists with that confidentiality. Who can be a mentor? Well, that's a very good question as well. I think primarily mentoring comes down to acknowledging moments in your life where you need support, or moments in your life where you can give support. A 6-year-old needs mentoring possibly from a 7-year-old who's been one year further through grade school. You often see situations in high school where a senior will mentor a freshman. And at college, you'll often have situations where the sophomore will be there to assist the freshman. It just depends on your stage in life. You emerge from school, you have your qualifications, and you end up in a business where somebody has been there before and done that, not necessarily in your business, but in your line of business. Certainly mentoring should not come from somebody who is your direct line advisor or supervisor, who has some influence on whether you keep or lose your job. A mentor should be somebody from outside of that sphere of influence. So anybody throughout life can be mentored and can be a mentor. Why write this book? Well, I've seen mentoring done very badly in the past. Where it's been done judgmentally, without compassion, without any empathy or understanding of the situation that the mentee finds themselves in, that brings them to that mentoring relationship. I think it's incumbent also on people who have some experience in life, like myself, into my 7th decade of life, to share those experiences with others. I've lived in many places around the world with my wife and my children. I've worked in private, public, educational, governmental organisations across a range of platforms of work. And so I can draw on living in all those places and working in all those contexts to hopefully provide some non-judgmental advice to those who are seeking it. I've pretty much seen it all, and I've experienced it all. And I wanted to put those thoughts down in words to enable people to share what I have to offer. A good mentoring experience that I've been involved in. Well, that's a really good question. I'm actually going to go to my book here for my favourite mentoring memory. One of my earlier ones, actually, as a clinical educator at the University of Otago, which was some 20 years or so ago. And so I'm going to take it from the book, Base Camp, The Complete Guide to Good Mentoring. Bear with me, I just need to give you a little bit of background. I've seen the value of mentoring within the same generation at first hand, which turned out to be a very appropriate and successful mentoring model within that context. It went something like this. When I was a clinical supervisor at the School of Physiotherapy, on any given Thursday, I would have the pleasure of the company of up to 6 Year 2 or sophomore students to supervise within the clinic, one set in the morning and another in the afternoon. Now, these students were absolute clinical novices, very wet behind the ears, where every clinical experience was a new one for them. Sharing the same clinical space were up to 4 senior students, supervised by a colleague of mine. These students were approaching the end of their undergraduate or pre-registration program. Just a couple of years earlier, they were in the same situation as the Year 2 students, but in 2 short years had developed the skills to meet the competencies required of an independent health professional. Although the clinical education program had these Year 2 and Year 4 students scheduled in the same clinic, their paths were generally parallel rather than intersecting. Neither group had anything to do with each other on any given Thursday. One Thursday, however, my colleague was ill and unable to work. His unfortunate...
Thanks to our audience for tuning in. Order of the book where refined books are sold. It is called Base Camp, The Complete Guide to Mentoring, out November 29th, 2024 by Martin Kidd. Thanks to our audience for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss. Chris Voss won the TikTok and all those crazy places on the internet. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you next time.